Welcome aboard to the Phil Tourney podcast with my special guest today, Merlin Miller. He's a graduate of the United States Military Academy at West Point. He's been interested in politics. I believe he ran for president too, or tried to get on the ballot. But it's my pleasure to have you, Merlin. If you would, please just go ahead and run down, part of your life, how you got in the military and how you got involved with the political part of it and things like that. And welcome aboard.
Well, thank you, Phil. It's a pleasure to be with you. And my background's a little strange, but I was very fortunate to come out of Iowa and got an appointment to the military academy. So great opportunity for me. Spent several years in the military after graduating and ultimately wanted to pursue my dream, which was producing motion pictures, and went out to California, a 2-year grad program from USC, and graduated and realized that Hollywood was not the place for somebody like me from Iowa with Christian and Midwest values. So ultimately left Hollywood after years of experience working low budget films for no money, not good films, but finally formed my own company and did this a couple of times. One film called A Place to Grow we shot in the Midwest. Another was a Western called Jericho, a mystery Western we shot in Texas. And in fact, it was while marketing Jericho that I really fell down the rabbit hole by meeting a shipmate of yours, Bob Scarborough. We were trying to get distribution through the theater chains, and Bob was working at that time with Carmike. He told me about your story, and I didn't believe it. I'd never heard of it, and being an Academy grad, I thought, oh, that's strange. I didn't believe it. But he introduced me to Dick Thompson, and that began my journey down the rabbit hole to learn not only about the Liberty and how your survival really affected things in this country, but how it led to one intrigue after another, and how this ties into basically the New World Order, and how Israel, as an arm of that New World Order, was created to facilitate the capture of nation states, and America being the prime target. So a lot of things involved in this, but after trying to get a film made about the USS Liberty for a number of years, I was ultimately recruited to be an independent political candidate for president, and got to make a trip to Iran, and then several trips followed that in conjunction with the film festival they were sponsoring. In fact, Iran almost funded the film to do the USS Liberty story, and had Ahmadinejad stayed as president for another year or two, that film would have been made with Iranian funding and support. Unfortunately, it didn't happen. They moderated their politics and tried to appease America and Israel, which of course didn't work. So I got involved in politics for several years and have gone down a lot of rabbit holes. But ultimately, my goal now is to still tell stories through movies, but to do what I can to get the word out there so that the American public can learn these truths, very difficult truths about how America has been captured by foreign elements.
You have a great background with military people. I believe that one of your fellow cadets was General Flynn. Is that correct?
No, General Flynn actually doesn't live too far from us. I don't know him very well personally. I know of him. I know people that work with him. But my classmates included David Petraeus, who at one time was head of the CIA, Martin Dempsey, who was chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Anderson, what's his first name? I'm drawing a blank. A guy, he headed up the NSA for several years and the cyber, and didn't know him as well, but I confronted him at a class reunion about the USS Liberty, and he was very evasive. Which is the story, unfortunately, with so many of my classmates who serve the military-industrial complex, or in one way or another have business interests with Israeli or American Jewish interests, which unfortunately prevent them from going down the rabbit holes that I'm trying to get them to go down. And I think they know much more than they're willing to admit, but unfortunately haven't stepped up with the courage to do the right things for our country yet. And I'm hopeful that's changing. I'd written a book about basically my journey, in a book called Eagles Are Gathering. And I've shared that with a number of classmates. Initially, I was perceived as sort of a pariah for going down this hole and basically accusing Israel of being a part of these schemes. But that's changing. I've noticed in the last year or so, many more are coming around and starting to believe, and they're starting to look at truths. And I credit Candace Owens, of course, Tucker Carlson, and of course this young man who just unfortunately was assassinated. Charlie Kirk was starting to come around and starting to learn these truths as well. So these courageous journalists are making a difference now. And podcasts like yours, there's a lot of them out there, and they're touching on the truths, and it's making a difference. People are waking up.
Absolutely. And it's about time they wake up, Merlin. It's about time for our country is completely taken over, destroyed by the very people that murdered my shipmates aboard the USS Liberty and tried to murder me, along with the rest of the crew, which is still covered up in today's history and back in '67 to right now till Trump's president. Now, you mentioned Dick Thompson. He was a CIA type guy, and he was deep into the USS Liberty. And, he said, I don't know if he mentioned this to you or not, Merlin, about Frontlet 615. He says, you get Frontlet 615 out there and you got the whole thing. But we can't get anything out of that. Did he ever discuss that with you?
He did, and we did a lot of research together. In fact, we're working on a screenplay at the time that he died. He was the champion for the Liberty cause for me. I mean, he sponsored me. He brought me actually to two of your reunions and was able to get me in there where I met you. I met a number of your shipmates and got to learn your personal stories, which really helped capped it for me. So I was able to then move forward, and Dick was instrumental in that.
Yeah, Dick was a nice guy. In fact, when he left our reunion, I forget when it was, which one it was. He was killed in a one car wreck. So
Yes,
I've always been suspicious of that. You remember Gary Brummett? He was always suspicious of it.
yes.
So who knows really why he died?
In fact, it was at that 2000 it was 2007, and at that reunion, the day or so before he left, there was a group of us gathered in one of the lounge areas, and he basically committed himself to funding the motion picture to tell your story. And that's what we were working on. And so it was totally devastating, of course, when he didn't make it home. And I understand his cell phone was never recovered. So there was some intrigue surrounding that, even though his family thought it was just health conditions that led to his accident.
The accident was unfortunate. If it was an accident, but we lost a true patriot with Dick, a fine gentleman, a great CIA personnel officer. I mean, he was always good to me, good to the whole crew, as you've been down through the years, and we miss him, no doubt. It's so sad he's gone. Just like with the LBJ and his cronies in the White House when we got attacked, it seems like the same people are running the show today. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think they've been running the show for probably since Woodrow Wilson was elected. I mean, everything that started happened in the early 20th century, and that's when I think the Zionists really made their move to capture all of our institutions, not just government, but of course media and our educational institutions. And it was a very well organized takeover of America, and it stepped through the decades and until I think when Kennedy was assassinated, that's when they made their big move. And of course, the Liberty shortly after that.
Yes, absolutely. And the control uh, of our Congress people then and now is even worse now. There's about 90% plus that take APAC money or beholden to them one way for fashion. They vote for Israel. They voted more money to kill innocent people in Gaza. And it's going on right now. It's been going on since October the 7th, which I question that too, about, they weren't there for some reason. That's another false flag on their own people. And a lot of people believe that. I don't know your thoughts on it, but what are they?
Yeah, I totally believe that the Congress has been captivated for half a century and or longer. You've got a few brave ones. You've got Thomas Massey, Marjorie Taylor Greene, and in the Senate you've got Rand Paul, who I think is not as far out there committed in terms of fighting this evil as the others are, but he is making those efforts. I'm hopeful that they can influence others. And I think next year's election, assuming we survive the course of the next year and Trump can get some things done, is very key. We've got to get control of the Congress and the Senate back to America firsters, back to representatives who can be elected that truly represent the people and not these special interest groups. And that's the big challenge we have right now, to clean up government from within. And it's not easy. I understand Trump is doing his best. I'm not totally satisfied with what he's doing, but I understand the situation he's in, and I'm just hopeful that he'll show the courage that Charlie Kirk and others have been showing and make the difference. That will make the difference.
It will make the difference, and I believe that totally. Like you mentioned, Candace Owens. I've got her book up here, Blackout. She treated me very well when I was on her podcast, as a lot of them have. Jake Shields, Clayton Morris, Myron Gaines from Fresh and Fit. Just so many of them. I hate, if I miss any of them, I'm terribly sorry. But they've all been good, and they take they take They're not taking chances. They're trying to tell the truth, but in real life, they are taking chances, not only with their livelihood, but their lives. I've had threats from people. They don't like me. They call me. Some of them say I was never even aboard the USS Liberty. I mean, that's how far it goes. But to get by with murdering American sailors and Marines on the high seas, and Israel got more money for murdering Americans on the high seas than they ever got in their life. JFK, when they got him and Johnson got in, all pre-planned. I feel it was pre-planned by Israel to off JFK. I feel 911, of course, the Liberty, and how many other things we don't know about. But the grip they have on our Congress is unconstitutional. It's treasonous, in my view. And when no government should take money from any APAC or Russia, from anybody, China, to fulfill their own needs. And that's what we've done. We've fallen into a trap of people that got our representatives by the short hairs. The blackmail, Epstein files comes to mention in my mind. The Epstein files, how many people's names are on there? There's a lot of them. What is it? The motto of Mossad: by deception we shall deceive. And there's been a lot of deception with Charlie Kirk. I don't believe they have the right killer either. I believe the right killer is long gone. I just don't believe what I hear in the news. I don't know your thoughts on that. If you got them, please share it.
I don't know. He created a lot of enemies, and so I wouldn't doubt either way. But certainly he was not a friend. He was certainly becoming an enemy of Israel. But going back to your comment, I mean, 100 years ago, over 100 years ago, when Woodrow Wilson was in, they basically captured our finance through creation of the Federal Reserve System, the IRS. They created of course, the Anti-Defamation League. So many things were created under that administration, and they basically inched their way forward until I think John F. Kennedy did challenge their power. He was trying to force history to give up their development of nuclear weapons. He was going to give them a desalination plant so they would not be stealing the waters from their neighbors and looking for, acquiring their neighbors' lands. And of course, David Ben Gurion, and he had some terrible fights about that. And Ben Gurion resigned, and it wasn't long after that that the assassination took place. And of course, there's all kinds of links. And a friend of ours, Michael Collins Piper, of course, in my opinion, wrote the best book on the JFK assassination with Final Judgment. And that sort of sowed the seeds for this. And so many truths coming out now, I think, are reflecting what Michael had done with his book, Final Judgment. And of course, the Liberty happening shortly after that, which to me just showed that they figured that they had captured America, that they could murder not only a president, but they could attack our own armed forces and get away with it and ultimately control our foreign policy, which they have ever since. And they've gotten it to the stage now where America is supporting genocide. We're doing everything that Israel wants us to do. And it certainly is not America first. And it's in total defiance of the will of the American people, our Constitution. Just in every way, America is on the precipice right now. We're almost lost. And if we don't have courageous people stand up now, and fortunately, a lot of people are waking up. And I do think that we're going to see this happen.
Yeah, I sure hope so. People that are waking up, yeah, they are waking up because they see what's going on. And with social media, Merlin, they have they're starting to push water uphill now because people are catching on. They're learning. They're not happy with the war in Europe with Ukraine and the Russians. They're not happy with what's going on in Gaza and us paying for it. And we've been paying for it forever. Like I said, they got more money than they ever did killing my shipmates. And they continue to get it by the handfuls. They get it, and the American citizens are paying for it, and they're tired of paying for wars. Hey, listen, we fought the first Gulf War in Iraq, Afghanistan. You have all these wars we fought in. It's all been for the benefit of the Zionist state because it doesn't help the United States in any way. It doesn't help the American citizen. It takes money from our treasury to pay for that money we don't have. And what is the upside? I mean, there's got to be an upside to this. How's it going to work out, you think?
Well, money is a big part of this, and we're on the verge of bankruptcy. I think we need to end the Fed. We need to get our own treasury printing our currency interest free, do what we can to get our sovereignty and our national independence back and away from central banking. It's these international bankers who are the root of all the evil. I mean, They created Israel. They may call themselves Jewish. I don't know that they truly are. The synagogue of Satan, in my opinion. But these international bankers have built such a network, buying politicians, buying the media. They bought our mainstream media, 100 years ago, and have absolute control of the mainstream media now. And fortunately, the internet has allowed the immersion of alternative media, which has made the difference. And that was a surprise to them. And I think it may just be their undoing.
I sure hope it is. I sure hope it is for the reason that Americans, they fought hard for this country. Our forefathers did, and the wars, World War I, World War II, Korea, Vietnam, all of them. The money men got benefited from that. 58,000 plus dead in Vietnam for what? All these wars fought for what? And it was all greed. Like Johnson said, you want a war, now you got your damn war in Vietnam. And, how callous can you be to send young men into battle for the wealth of the military industrial complex is sinful.
And you can go as far back as the French Revolution if you want to find out how international bankers have affected wars and basically caused wars, financed them for their own gain. And their strategy, as you said, with the Mossad's motto, by way of deception, thou shalt do war. And they're excellent game masters at doing this and excellent at pitting people against each other. And false flag is one of the primary tools they use. And that's exactly what they employed in trying to sink the USS Liberty. And I think so many instances in history, and I wrote about a lot of these things in my book and put as much evidence as I had available to me at the time. But it all paints a very compelling picture. And the circumstantial evidence, in my opinion, is overwhelming. And if we were ever allowed to get to the true facts, if we'd had some real investigations, and there are efforts being made right now. I know this Justice for 9/11 is doing some good things, architects and engineers. Tucker Carlson has a new series on 9/11, which he's going to, I think, release a week from this coming Tuesday on the 23rd. It's a 5-part series, and I think that's going to break some interesting ground and hopefully get people to really stand up and say, wait a second, we need a real investigation. We need to get the real culprits behind bars and not be chasing false enemies. And this whole war on terror, to me, is a construct developed to pit the Christian world against the Islamic world, such that the globalist and the Zionist interests benefit from it in every way. And we're in the midst of this, and the battle's being joined now. If enough Americans will wake up, we can turn this around quickly. A lot of foreign nations are waking up much quicker than America is, simply because we've been the primary target. They've had to totally control America, bring us down. If you bring America down, the New World Order will win. The only hope the world has is for America to survive in accordance to our Constitution and promotion of a middle class, in promotion good values, Christian values in our case. And I think the country desperately needs that right now. And Charlie Kirk's mission and going around to young college students, so important, so critically important to wake up these young people to how they've been propagandized their entire life through mass media, through games, through education. It's just such a sinister agenda, but it's been very well orchestrated, very well coordinated. We just got to unravel it and tear it apart.
You're right about Charlie. He was reaching the young, and he did wake up. He was more pro-Israel than I liked, but then he changed. Something got to him, and he changed. And I guess he saw the light. He understood what the Zionist regime is doing to not just to America, but the world. Well, you got Zelensky in Ukraine. He's a Jew, and that's a Jewish war. You got Gaza. That's a Jewish war against people that, in my view, especially in Gaza, have done nothing wrong but try to survive on their own land, and now they're being destroyed for it and run out of their country, which I think is the most ungodly thing you could do to the Palestinians, and especially the little kids. To see the suffering that goes on there is unimaginable. But can we fight 2 wars again in the Middle East and in Europe, all
No,
over?
no. I'm a fan also of Colonel Douglas MacGregor, and I think he, as a military analyst, is probably closest to anybody in describing what's really going on in the international scene. And America is simply not capable. We will fall if we overextend ourselves any more than we have. And you're right, these wars, we should not be involved in it. America was always about being a neutral country, minding our own business, leading by positive example and not through force. And it's just sinister to me to see what's happened to us. Our military has been captured, and hopefully we can turn that around. You mentioned Charlie and what influenced him. I actually donated a little money a long time ago when I first learned about Turning Point, and tried writing to him and basically trying to open his eyes to some of the realities dealing with the Zionist questions. But I truly believe it was your friend Candace Owens that opened his eyes. I think he started going down rabbit holes, discovering those truths for himself, and it was making the difference for him. And in my opinion, Candace is one of the most courageous people we've got in our country right now, and she's got to be safe. She's got to protect herself, but I hope she keeps this battle going. Tucker as well, and so many others that you've mentioned. We've got to keep fighting forward now.
Absolutely. And Candace, you're right. If they could do it to Charlie, they can do it to anybody. And, Candace, she worked at PragerU, and then she went over to Benny Shapiro on the Daily Wire, and she woke up to what the Jews are doing, Israel's doing, and she didn't like it. And Ben didn't like it that she was waking up. I guess he got rid of her, and she went on her own. She's doing better now than his program, because she tells the truth and she's sincere. And she's a godly woman. Jesus Christ is her savior, as he is mine. I know religion plays a whole lot into it, and you're a very, very religious man. What do you think God is doing right now? What do you think? I mean, what would you like him to do for America, for the world?
Well, I believe for a long time that we need divine intervention, and perhaps we're getting it now. Perhaps through the efforts of these new courageous journalists, and perhaps politically, some of these people stepping up now are all part of God's game plan. But I do believe that He's going to help lead the way if we'll just listen, if we'll just open our hearts and pursue truth, pursue the noble deed instead of selling out. And the selling out part is what has been so bad for our country. We've become very, in my opinion, Jewish minded in the sense that it's materialism. It's all ego. It's all self-serving. I look at my classmates, the David Petraeus, Keith Alexander was the one at the NSA. I was losing his name there. These people, have basically served their own interests. I've challenged them on this, and there's some other examples. I don't know if you remember, a guy named Wayne Downing was the first counterterrorism czar. He was a four-star general that was called out of retirement by George Bush Jr. To lead the war on counterterrorism. He became somewhat, opposed to the actions of attacking and going into Iraq once he started learning more truths. His best friend at West Point, they were classmates, class of 61, was a man named Jim Kimsey, who was a co-founder of AOL. I got to know Jim Kimsey quite well. In fact, he invested in our Mystery Western Jericho, and his son was assistant director on the film for me. So we got along great. Yeah, I sent a manuscript that I'd written, which was sort of the forerunner to my book, to Jim. He read it, and he always opened his door up to me. He knew these things were going on, but he didn't have his finger on exactly how it was happening. But he was actually a billionaire and was welcomed into the Trilateral Commission, and doing what he could, I think, on the inside to say, hey, how can we turn this thing around? But unfortunately, Jim and Wayne Downing made a trip to Iraq. I think this was 2007, 2008, and they both became very ill. They came back, and Wayne Downing died shortly after there. The official cause was hepatitis, but they had been starting to challenge the narrative about the whole Iraq war. And Jim told me in private that he thought they were poisoned. Jim survived it, fortunately, but succumbed to cancer a few years after that. But these are all just little indications of people that are in the system, that are caught up in the system, that I think want out of it. And they want to get out and do the right things, but they're still captive in various ways. There are other people I can mention. There was a man that worked for President Richard Nixon, a guy named Fred Malik. I got to know Fred. Basically, he was a very wealthy man, contributed a lot of money to the academies. Through the years, I kept querying him to see if he would help me with the film projects. He always wrote very courteous letters back, but just couldn't commit to doing anything. But he had been caught up in the Nixon administration with challenging the power of Jewish people within the administration. And he paid a dear price for that, had to apologize up and down for doing some investigating on the amount of Jewish people in certain key positions within government. And of course, Watergate happened after that to destroy Nixon's career. But in my opinion, it was simply because Nixon started challenging Jewish power in our country. But Fred Malek gave me some indications, never did invest in us, but he had too many business alignments with Jewish interests to be able to do that. And he did give me a couple clues once we walked on a march back for our daughter was doing the freshman march back at the end of the summer training of first year, and a lot of academy grads joined them in that to encourage them back and welcome them into the academy. He went on that march back with me, and we shared quite a bit when we were talking along that way. And he was basically telling me how even within my own company, I was being undermined, and it came to be, and it proved out. So, I mean, these things are there. There's a lot of good people that want to do good, want to do the right things. They're getting closer and closer, and we just need some more people to stand up and be the catalyst for everybody to stand up.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you look back to World War II and General Patton and how he died supposedly in a Jeep wreck. And I don't believe that either. I think Patton was a person that they wanted to get rid of and he was gone. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Oh, I do believe that. In fact, my wife's father served as a infantry company commander under Patton and thought the world of him and what he was trying to do in Germany after the war in terms of giving the German people the ability to bring their countries back. And of course, he was making a lot of political overtures. I thought we fought the wrong army in World War II and was getting to run in politics when his accident happens. No, I have no doubt that there was politics involved in his death.
Politics, politics, and politics. All is what it's about: money, power, ego, and staying in power. And I want to go back to a little bit about religion. Pastor Chuck Baldwin in Kalispell, Montana, Liberty Fellowship. He is a great one. He's very, very good. He preaches the truth. Rick Wiles, True News. And I know Rick isn't doing too much on True News anymore, but he's still preaching and, getting out the word. And, he's marked too. The Zionists hate him.
Mhm.
Brian Mass doesn't think too much of him either. I think he's in the 23rd I think it's the 23rd district in Florida. He wore a Israeli uniform into the Capitol.
Yeah,
And I thought that was about as disgraceful as you can be. That's treasonous in my view.
yeah, shameful.
Very shameful. But they
Mhm.
get by with it. They got Israeli flags outside their offices and, they got full access to the congressmen or senators. They're welcome. They go on junkets to Israel to get on their knees and to do whatever they can for them to support the Zionist state of Israel and spend our money where it should be spent here in America for a number of different things. I won't get into all of them, but there's too many to list. Let's go with roads for one, and homeless people for two, and just on and on and on. And the war against drugs, I'm happy to hear that. Getting illegals out of the country that are criminals, raping people, killing people. I'm very happy with that. So on. Trump has done very good things in those lines, but I think his allegiance to Netanyahu is unbreakable. Your thoughts?
Well, it would seem so, but I don't know. I truly believe that deep down he's a good person. He is doing a lot of good things for America domestically. It's just foreign policy wise. He's got to abandon his donors. He's got to do the right things for America. And if he did that, I think he'd find the MAGA base would be 100% behind him. And he would find a lot of other supporters. It's the move he needs to make right now. And APAC, as you mentioned earlier, is the key funding source for owning the Congress and the Senate and so many of the other, even state politicians. And John F. Kennedy, in fact, was trying to get APAC, they were called something else at that time, to register as a foreign entity. But that should immediately happen. They should not be allowed to be influencing our elections and funding campaigns, totally antithetical to the American dream, the American way of life. And, we just got to get back to our Constitution and get good people running for Congress and the Senate who truly put America first.
As JFK did when he got a hold of Ben Gurion and says, "No, you're not going to have a nuclear weapon." But that did it for Kennedy, I believe, and they couldn't have him around anymore. I think Johnson was part of that. I mean, I don't know all the ins and outs of it, but what I read, and what I've heard, and what I know, Johnson was a snake. I know he was a snake to the USS Liberty, and that's one of the reasons he didn't want to run again. I think he was too embarrassed to run, or he's too useless anymore for his obedience to Israel, one or the other. But he got out there before he got knocked off. There's just too many crooks in Congress. We, the people, pay their bills, but we, the people, are not getting the benefit from our elected officials. Years back until now, it's just a shame to see. They're so proud to say they're American, but support another country that's genociding little kids, men and women in Gaza, all for land. If the Liberty would have sunk June 8th, 1967, it was nothing but a land grab anyway. Nothing but a land grab is all it was. They wanted to sink us fast, blame it on Egypt, Nasser, and we're in World War III. There were jet aircraft on the way, SAC aircraft, even before we got attacked, to attack Egypt, and they were called back to the last minute. So that's how close we were to a confrontation, and more likely a nuclear war, because Russia was there. They had subs under us. They were there, ready to go if they had to, and that's frightening. Our ship not sinking possibly saved millions of lives by the grace of God, and God's the only person that came to help us. Nobody else did.
Yep. That's very true. And of course, the Soviet Union has basically done some role reversals with America since then. I mean, they're a republic now. They have abandoned communism. They know the evils of it. They purged themselves of all the oligarchs that were stealing control of Russian resources. I think Putin became enemy number one here several years back simply by defying the New World Order and these Zionist schemers. And that's what this war against Ukraine is all about. NATO, and of course, it was American State Department personnel, Victoria Nuland and others, that engineered the coup back in 2014, which put the pressure on Russia. And basically, all this NATO posturing against Russia is designed to put the pressure and destroy Russia because they've come up to be the champion for sovereignty, for national sovereignty, and for freedoms and independence of nation states. And that's why these leaders in these European countries are all global puppets, globalist puppets. And I think these European countries have come to that realization now, and that's why they're experiencing so many problems. The globalist leaders, of course, ushered in massive immigration, destroying their economies, destroying their freedoms, taking away all the liberties of the people in Europe now. We're to be the crown jewel of that, and I hope they don't get us. We've got to fight now and make sure that Europe can be restored as well.
Yes, we need all of us to work on the same page. Our politicians, they control it, but are cooler heads going to prevail? Are they going to try to tamp this down, or have we gone to a bridge too far with what's been going on for since October the 7th in Ukraine? What has that been going on over a couple of years now? So I don't know what the real answer is, because everybody's puppets, as you said. Our own Congress.
We just keep doing what we are doing and try to grow it, just like Charlie Kirk was growing within the young market. People are waking up. You go to X and you see the posts there. Overwhelmingly, they're anti-war. They're anti what's going on in Gaza. They're against the Ukraine war. They're opposed to all these evil actions. Of course, illegal immigration they're opposed to. They want our economy back. They want a middle class back. They don't want foreigners replacing Americans in the workforce. They want all of these things, and they're starting to demand it. And if Trump will listen to his base, if he will just stand up and somehow shed himself from the Zionist controllers, get him out of his administration, the ones that aren't America first. And I'm not condemning all Jewish people, because there are some very courageous ones. Max Blumenthal is doing some good things. I documented several in my book, too, that I think have done great things, courageous things in fighting this whole Zionist movement and seeing it for what it really is. It's nothing to do with biblical history. I mean, they've totally manipulated biblical interpretations to their own advantage, and Christians have lost their way by not looking at Jesus and the New Testament and trying to interpret and evaluate the Old Testament from a Christian perspective rather than an ancient Judaic perspective, which is what most of them do today. And they are waking up to that, and I'm hopeful, and I think this battle is going to be joined within the next 6 months, Phil. I do believe that we're going to see a very positive change within the next 6 months. If not, then we better leave the country.
I don't know where we're going to go, Merlin.
I don't either.
I just don't know where we're going to go. But uh, talking about the Jewish people, and I want to clarify for everybody, this isn't about the Jewish people as a whole. I've seen many of them on X and Instagram, places like that, denouncing what's going on, and they don't like Zionism. That isn't what they're going for, and they're fighting against that, and they're called traitors for it. They're just speaking their mind and saying, "Hey, this is pure genocide, and we're not part of that." In fact, they're even burning Israeli flags. I've seen it even in Israel. They're having huge protests against the war. It's the governments, it's the people in charge that got their finger on nuclear weapons that are running the world. And the Samson option, I believe, is on the table. It always has been on the table for Israel. Your thoughts?
Yeah, unfortunately, I think you're right, and there's some crazies within the government of Israel over there now, and there are more people turning against them. But unfortunately, like 85% of the Israelis are very pro-war, very much for the genocide that's going on in Gaza, which is very disturbing to me to see that. But they have bought into this supremacist ideology, and if they would really study their history better, they could get away from that. And I dare say that probably half the Jewish people in America are still of that mindset. They still have a supremacist ideology, and they support virtually anything Israel wants to do. But increasingly, that other 50% is going to be growing, I think, in America, seeing the dangers to their long term interests. And if they would stand up and be America firsters and truly fight for what's right in the world, which means peace and humanitarian efforts, I mean, I think if they would do that, it would make it so much easier for the politicians in our country to stand up and do right again.
Right. Well, you talk about the MAGA base. The MAGA base is splitting apart because of these wars, because of Gaza, because of Ukraine and Russia and other places around the world. I mean, we're funding so many places around, so many countries around the world, one way or another. I mean, we don't have any money. We're printing money we don't have. $37 trillion in debt. How are we going to ever get debt down? I remember when it was 10 billion or 11 billion, 8 billion, 9 billion, I mean, a trillion. And I thought, oh my God, we're never going to get out of this hole. Now it's 37 trillion. So we're spending everybody's money on wars for the benefit of other countries. And we're not doing much good for the American people. Not at this point. I mean, the gas prices here are still up. Grocery prices are still up, just like they were under Biden. So, but I think our whole country, our politicians need to get on a different footing. And I think alternative media is the way to do that. Having guests like you on that know what they're talking about, believe what they're talking about, believe in the God, and God is the way out of this if we just follow His teachings. But these people in Congress, they put their hand on the Bible and take an oath to defend the Constitution of the United States and none other, and then they hang an Israeli flag outside their office. So who are they really fighting for? They're not fighting for the regular guy. They're fighting for another country, and they flaunt it. They're taking money from the Zionist state, from AIPAC to control them, and they actually admit it. So, I mean, that's pretty, it's not only shameful, it's arrogant to push that back in our face. If you don't, like Ted Cruz says, if you don't support Israel, and he's in the church, if you don't support Israel, I don't support you. And he walked out. Ted Cruz. And I thought I liked the guy. No, I don't like the guy anymore.
Yeah, no, at least religiously, they're brainwashed. They don't really understand true Christianity, and I think one of the things that may bring this to a head now, and you talk about the Congress and how owned they are. The constituents have to stop standing up and saying, no, we aren't going to put another Israeli firster in our district. We're going to vote somebody in, hopefully who's a veteran or somebody who's an America firster that truly will represent our interests. But in the meantime, I think the bankers are in trouble right now, and if the right moves are made, America should go through a bankruptcy. We need it. We desperately need to repudiate our debt. We need to write it off. We need to start anew, have a currency reset, get a new American dollar issued by our currency, by our treasury, that's interest-free. and put it into circulation, earn it into circulation, rather than going with a debt-based society where we're borrowing from private bankers who just create this out of thin air. I mean, it's just a bizarre license to steal that we allowed over 100 years ago, and it's just destroyed our country in the meantime.
It has, and it's cost our country thousands and thousands and thousands of lives, American lives, tens of thousands.
And the worst thing it did, I think, was it enabled the bankers to buy anything they wanted to buy. They could buy our politicians, buy all of our media, buy any organization, anything they want to do. They've been empowered to do that with our money.
Yep, we give it to them, and they take it and do what they want to with it. You know, Fox News, Newsmax, they're all pro-Israel. I mean, really pro-Israel, especially Newsmax. I quit watching them, and I kind of liked them until they went completely pro-Israel because I thought they were pro-America. And the MAGA base, and I've got people that are friends of mine that they said, "What'd you vote for Trump for?" And I said, "Well, because of transparency that he promised and a better future for our families, our kids and grandkids and their kids." And nothing like that's happening because all of our money goes to pay for other countries and wars that we don't need to be in. And, you know, I'm just sick of it. That's why I do this podcast, is to bring people like you on to make sure that you understand that people like me that have been persecuted by our own government, covered up by our own government, ordered by our own government to shut up or end up in prison or death. I mean, we just went through hell, and then our old government abandoned us at the beginning, setting us up, LBJ, and then Admiral Isaac Kidd, 2 days after the attack, telling us to shut up or go to prison for telling the truth. And I didn't say anything about it for 18 years because I was too afraid to. And then finally we got the USS Liberty Veterans Association going, thanks to Stan White and Joe Metters and people like that. And, you know, we've just gone on from there, and we haven't turned back from the truth. But the truth will really set you free. And this alternative media, as I said before, will set us free if the younger people will listen, and they are listening now. Look at Charlie Kirk, as you mentioned. The young people are listening to him. And I think that's what got him killed, regardless who did it. His voice to the college students, the future of America, going away from what our, let's say, boomers have done over the years. And Trump's a boomer, no doubt. Many of them in Congress. Look at, well, there's several of them over 80, you know, and I think that's getting a little bit too old to run a country, but maybe not. Who knows? But the youth is the spirit, the backbone of America. And I pray that they don't get drafted or have to go to war to fight a Zionist war, to die for Israel or anybody else. They come on our shores. We'll take care of them here on our shores. We don't need to be fighting wars anywhere in the world. We're not going to, we shouldn't be supporting them. We shouldn't fund them. We shouldn't give them anything, not even a hello, if they want to start wars or have us fight them for them or give our money to fight them. So I'm completely fed up with that, completely fed up. And I think everybody else is too. So Merlin, closing out, what do you?
I'd like to leave it on a note of hope and some positive thoughts here, Phil, because like you say, our boomer generation has been asleep. You know, we weren't diligent as our founding fathers wanted us to be in preserving what they had set up for us. We lost that. We fell asleep. But things are waking up. When Trump came on the scene, I wrote my book in 2015, and I was pretty critical of Trump when I first came out with that book. I thought he would prove to be another global elite supporting this New World Order scheme. But by early 2016, as his campaign developed and he started revealing his platform, I started changing my mind. Halfway through the campaign, I decided, I think this guy's the best shot we got. I had actually formed a new political party back in 2014, which really, in reality, if you studied the book, you studied our platform, was the MAGA movement. We formed that in 2014 with the intent of running Jim Traficant as a presidential candidate in 2016. And of course, just as we were preparing to form the American Eagle Party, Jim Traficant died a mysterious death. Very strange circumstances there. So our party basically lost that leader. We didn't have a leader to head up the party ticket. And when Trump then ultimately won, and we supported him as a party, we endorsed him toward the end and supported him, and then closed the party at the end of 2016, thinking that this man may just do the job. And I was very encouraged in his 4 years of trying. he was attacked from every side. He was attacked by the moneyed interests, definitely the media from every side. Of course, the Democrats were given all the information they could. The intelligence agencies were working against him. And at that time, and even years before, probably in the Kennedy era, the agencies, especially the CIA, were taken over by globalist interests. And those globalist interests, I think, still have a heavy hand in trying to control these agencies. But I did see Trump survive that. He came back and with the support he had in 2016, he really probably had it in 2020. I think the election was cheated, but ultimately he came back. And in 2024, his base got stronger and stronger, and they desperately want a change to save America now. So on that hopeful note, I think you're going to see it keep growing. And I think if Trump will just do the right things now in the next few months, you'll see us get our country back.
I pray you're right, and I pray that happens. I mean, I pray that so hard. I want it to happen for our country and the future of our children. Are you still selling your book, Merlin?
It's still available on Amazon, and of course, the American Free Press is the publisher for it, so it is still available. Hardly any sales initially, but it's starting to pick up. There's more interest, especially from the West Point community. I see more and more of them saying this laid out exactly what's been happening. I'm hopeful people will find the truths in it and go from there and go down their own rabbit holes.
Merlin, is there a social media outlet we can get to the people to get your address, who you are, what you're doing?
Well, my best contact is my email, merlinm7@bellsouth.net. I do still have an old website, merlinmiller.com, which hasn't been worked in years, but it basically has a lot of information through all the years of research that I did. So merlinmiller.com is a website, but merlinmillerm7@bellsouth.com is the best way to get.
Well, okay. Thank you, Merlin, and God bless you, sir. It's a great honor to have you on my podcast, and we'll do it again. My best to your wife, Susie, and hopefully we can get together again. I still have that bottle you gave me of wine, Fearless, when you were at my house. So I'll never forget that. It was nice seeing you here. And, it's been my honor, and I really appreciate it coming on the Phil Tourney podcast. Stay tuned. We got a lot of different people coming on, Merlin, and I'll send them all to you. But thank you again, sir, and thank you for serving our country as an officer in the United States Army, and your girls that have served as military officers, graduated from West Point. So you got a lot to be proud of.
Well, thank you, Phil, and thank you for everything you're doing. You're a true friend, not only to me, but to the country, and keep up your courageous work. It's making a difference.
Thank you, sir. Catch up next time. Thanks, Merlin. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.